This episode of The Clear Out was recorded on the 10th of October 2023 at home in Wicklow, and in it I look at the idea of giving and receiving in a relational context. So that dynamic of being able to receive. I speak about a class I'm hoping to start running soon in Dublin, which will be offering an hour of energy flow and mindfulness and positivity, breath work, and I discussed the overriding concept of that class, which is the receptive mind. So I speak a bit about that as well. So being able to receive things. I share some thoughts on the conflict playing out in Israel at the moment, and I also spend some time talking about, men who don't talk, and once again find myself singing the praises of my own male friends and the benefits that I have enjoyed for many, many years from those friendships, from those good men in my life, and the emotional support that they've consistently made available to me and I to them. So that's what's coming up. If you can handle it, do you think you can handle it? There's only one way to find out. Keep listening. I'll see you around the corner. Cheers.
Not gonna change my mind, leaving the dream behind, keep my emoji inside.
Hi, my name is Dara Clear, and you're listening to The Clear Out. Welcome back if you're a return listener, and welcome for the first time if this is your first time. So here we go again, another hour or so, maybe less. What do we say for, I suppose or so incorporates the idea of less as well. An hour, there or thereabouts. Leaning into some corner of understanding. That's what's going on right here, right now. The sun is shining. It's warm out there. It's warm. I was optimistic October would bring us some nice weather, and so it's proving. Unseasonably warm, perhaps, maybe cause for concern. Is this global warming? I don't know, but it's very nice, and as I stated last week, very autumnal. Leaves are falling, the colours are changing. Our shed, there's a lovely old shed in our garden here at #blessed, and it went from green to red, and now those leaves are gone. A sure sign of the changing season. I was told this morning by a father waiting at the bus stop, I was told that the temperatures are going to drop next week. So I'll brace myself. But today you'd be comfortable in shorts and a t-shirt, and I'll definitely be cutting grass this afternoon. There you go, all the hot stories. All the hot stories, the latest happenings here on The Clear Out. The latest happenings. I don't know about you, but I tend to just glance at news headlines because they're all variations on a theme in their respective areas, and I just feel, do I need to read more about Hamas and Israel? Do I need to engage in the respective rhetoric of the chosen publication or website? Do I need to listen to hawkish Israelis? There you go. That's it. I've just I've just revealed my position. I don't. I just feel I don't. What else is someone from the Israeli government going to say? What else is Netanyahu going to say? I am not going to sit here and hold forth on the Middle East. I'm not going to hold forth on Gaza, on occupation, on Hamas, on Israel. There are so many layers to it. There are so many things that I find objectionable. I will say this regarding Israel's general attitude and general behaviour territorially and nationally. I will say that I never feel I don't understand where they're coming from. I never scratch my head and go, oh, why are they doing that? I mean, you follow the breadcrumbs back to the Second World War, to the Holocaust, to the post-World War settlement / arrangement. I believe the English had a very key hand in establishing the state of Israel post-war. I hope that's not an oversimplification, but obviously that's gone very well. I never think, where did this come from? I mean, Israel as symbol or emblem of Judaism, or Judaic identity, or Judaic sovereignty anyway. There's no greater example of the battered child, the unloved child, and that kind of aggressive stance, that aggressive self-protective instinct has never really gone away, has it? Now, again, I'm not... That's it. I need to stop there before I go into it, but that to me always appears to be the fundamental psychology. And as I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, until weapons can be put down in every sense, in a metaphorical sense, weapons manifest in prejudices and assumptions. That was my argument on an episode a couple of weeks ago. And of course, literal weapons. There's never a chance of true dialogue, of true engagement. Never a chance of a true exchange. Maybe that's something, that idea of an exchange. There's a concept I've been playing with in my Qigong and Tai Chi teaching, and one which I'm going to present as an actual conceptual strategy. I'm hoping in a few weeks to start teaching an energy flow class, breathwork, energy flow, mindfulness, positivity. I'm hoping to start teaching a class once a week up in Dublin. I'll let you know more when that's confirmed. But I'm calling the class the Receptive Mind. And it's a phrase I often use when I've used it when I've recorded meditations or sort of life coaching pieces for Aura, the wellness app. Aura, can you feel my aura? I often invite the listener to step into a receiving place, or to ask themselves to enter a receiving state of mind. And this idea then of having a receptive mind that simply observes, notices, acknowledges, sees, registers, notes, whatever seeing, observing verb you want to use. The receiving mind just receives information, in terms of what the brain is taking in terms of what's around us. And that can be our emotional state, that can be the physical environment, that can be the actions, or the behavior, the words of another person. Can we simply go, oh, that's happening, and not attach value. So there is there's a Buddhist, kernel in there, and a phrase like being the witness. I think I've come across that in different circles. It's in that territory, but I love the idea of really fully committing to that position of receiving, being in receipt of something, and to understand it as part of an exchange. Because you sort of have to let go of things to receive them. So, for example, if I go back to the idea of weapons, if I'm holding weapons, I can't receive a gift. Unless a gift is, a list of my victims. But I'm not sure how edifying that is. That would be an incredibly combative stance. So again, I'm revealing my thoughts on Israel there as well. But if, as I am, a lot of your sense of wellness and a lot of your sense of understanding of self comes from not just the work you do on yourself or how you spend your time or what your work is, how you apply yourself or follow your interests, but also what your relationships are and how healthy your relationships feel, how affirming they may or not be. I often think of healthy relationships in terms of the exchange. Now, it's not a transaction, but it's an exchange. It's a sharing. It's a give and receive dynamic, which, in a very basic sense, involves listening. If you want to use a phrase like holding space, you can. But it is about listening, and it's also about being heard. It's about having the sense that you are being offered that courtesy by the other party. And I think it's a very powerful idea. And just because my voice went high on powerful, that doesn't mean I doubt the idea. That's just what happened with my voice just there. But yeah, the receptive mind. Even saying that phrase, I find I calm down. I find it a very soothing phrase. So yeah, I'm hoping to just run some drop-in classes in Dublin starting in a few weeks. And that's what it'll be, just getting the sort of energy in space, getting the mind to turn a certain way so it can be aligned with open, flowing energy, calming, steadying, grounding. And I think anyone who comes to that class will leave feeling better, feeling very chilled, very calm, very confident, and quietly reassured by their own access to their own resources. So yeah, receiving. I mean, it's I find it's a good barometer. It's a very good barometer of a relationship and the state it's in, because some people don't receive, they only give. And it's just, and you might think, oh, that sounds lovely. That sounds delightful. They only give, but we're not talking in a literal sense. We're not talking about gifts. In a way, what they give you is the gift of themselves relentlessly. So every single box you open, it's more of them. I mean, that gift has limitations, doesn't it? But some people, that's the only frequency they have, and it's perhaps fueled by uncertainty, anxiety, insecurity. It could be fueled by selfishness, by narcissism, by self-absorption, and it betrays an absence of calm, an absence of confidence that it's okay. I don't have to make this about me. I can stop and hear this other person. I can listen to them. I can ask them about themselves. And I don't need to just sit here waiting for my moment to insert my thing and give more of myself. I don't know, I was going to elevate it to something pretentious there. I'm going to hold myself back. But there is a skill to it, isn't there? Isn't there a skill to listening? To listening and holding what you've heard and considering it and finding a response that's true. I think there's value in that, isn't there? And see, some people just aren't interested. It's easy to cut those people out of your life. Does that sound ruthless? I think it's just healthy, because it's, ultimately it's, what's happening here? Why am I giving my time to this person who actually has no interest? And this dynamic. It's kind of adjacent to the whole drains and radiators idea. But drains and radiators as personality types, I think we do attach value. The drain sucking all the energy, draining all the energy. The radiator giving, radiating energy. Personality types, it's not a zero-sum game. They are not the only two types. But again, I come back to that idea of the receptive mind, and I don't pretend for a second that is a place I live in on a daily basis. Not at all. Not at all. And I could certainly do with more of the receptive mind in my parenting approach, because this impulse I have to control my daughter's behaviour at times, I distrust it, and I don't like it, because it often leads to conflict, and it often leads to anger. In my case, which I go, this is crazy. This is not a proportionate response. What's this about? Because my daughter's just being a kid. Her behaviour rarely teeters into that's really bad behaviour. So really the issue is me. My relationship to control, and then that becomes a challenge to me. Can I let go of that? Can I let go of that impulse and that sort of hardwired need, for everything to be as I want it to be, which is like an insane position. Like that is such a red light, that energy. That's like stop, no, go no further. It's absolutely the opposite of the receptive mind, and it certainly isn't calm. So yeah, as always on the podcast, this is just pure self-therapy. It's me talking through my own stuff and working it out. Anyway, there you go. Giving and receiving. I suppose that that nudges up against, and maybe more than nudges up against. I mean, it is also an expression of acceptance. Can you accept what's out there and not feel you have to reject it, stop it, control it? It's funny. I saw a headline the other day. It must have been one of the Sunday papers, or maybe it wasn't. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was something about toxic positivity. Yeah. So I rarely use that phrase. Not because I don't understand what it is. I've probably used a phrase like hyper positivity or performative positivity or performative wellness, curated wellness. And the podcast is, in many ways, it's my attempt to counter a lot of that stuff, to counter wellness content or positivity content that I find really dubious and vacuous. Merely, stuff I look at or listen to and I go, it's just lip service, it's just sound bites, and it looks a certain way. And that's something I've been kind of thinking about lately. And this is something that I say no to. It's something that I resist and I judge and I put up a red light and I simply don't accept. And I have a huge part of that in how I sift through the things in the world that bother me. I can be a little bit zero tolerance. I'm going to go, no, I just call BS on this. It's phony, and I've had a phony. My phoniness radar has been finely tuned for many, many years, and it still seems to just flare up on a regular basis. But no, what I was going to say there was, speaking of that kind of thing, which does fall under this umbrella term of toxic positivity, like positivity that isn't authentic, positivity that lays out, templates, matrices, for happiness, with a capital H and a registered trademark beside it. It's unhelpful. It's not real. And I find a lot of it, and a lot of people are out there presenting that stuff. It's presented in a very particular way visually. And I think, and this is not exclusive to, the world of wellness advocacy or positivity advocacy, positive psychology, positive living, whatever you want to call it. This can be true of other sectors or areas as well. But I do find that predominantly what you see on social media in this area is a very particular look and a very particular vibe, and very particular language. And really, what I think when I've looked at all this stuff or glanced at it or skimmed past it over the last few years in particular, my conclusion is, wellness is not an aesthetic. I'm going to repeat that for emphasis. Wellness is not an aesthetic. It's not a look. Now, you can say wellness is aesthetic. That's different, because we can see I think instinctively what wellness looks like when someone is well. We can see it. If we're in the, with them in the flesh, we might even feel it. Feel the energy, feel the wellness, feel the centeredness, the groundedness, whatever it might be. And that's a different thing. Identifying signifiers of wellness. But if we're talking about how a lot of wellness advocates or influencers or spokespeople or whoever, how they present wellness, or their version of wellness, their iteration, their curation of wellness. My argument is it's not an aesthetic, but people get caught up. And I mean, and that I've spoken about this before. I think this is it's a huge part of social media. It's a huge part of the internet. It's it's so visual, and so much of this stuff is consumed on phones and tablets and laptops, various screens of various sizes, and it's an incredibly visual medium. And people, if you think of Karl Marx's famous statement that religion is the opium of the people, I don't know if that's apocryphal or not, but we're going to attribute it to Karl Marx anyway. That sense that maybe we all have of how stupefied and dopified people are by their phones, transfixed by endless scrolling or content consumption on screens, that kind of shuts people down and prevents them. I don't know if it prevents them, but it's certainly a factor against engaging their own critical faculties, their own critical thinking, their own reflection, and their own sort of energy management. When you've got this energy vortex that we carry around with us, in terms of our phones and tablets, they just suck us in like a vortex. It's extraordinary how powerful devices are, and to sort of remove ourselves from that and to put down what effectively, they've almost become like soothers for kids, pacifiers, dummies, whatever you want to call them. And we're all like, Maggie Simpson from The Simpsons, just sucking on our dummies, except it's phones and we're listening to podcasts or reading or playing games or catching up on our latest show or doom scrolling, as they call it. Going down rabbit holes of horrible news stories and news cycles and conspiracy theories. And it's, and then you can talk about, the dopamine hits of getting likes or acknowledgements or comments on things that you've responded to or stuff that you've put up on the social media platforms. But I think there's also a dopamine hit from going back to, the shows that we like to watch, different YouTube channels, TikTok, I guess must be that times 1,000. And it's all distraction. It's all a kind of an eerie magnetism, and it's all sort of soul sucking on some level. on some level. I mean, I don't want to be too melodramatic about it because that's maybe a little bit ridiculous. But it's, you know, it's related to what I'm talking about, because if many of us are mainly consuming the world through devices and engaging with the world through devices, we have to be real about how particular that experience it is, and ask ourselves, well, if that's where I'm meeting the world, where am I not meeting the world? Where am I not engaging with the world? And to take it back to my previous point, where am I having an exchange? Where am I experiencing giving and receiving? Because there's an extraordinary, and I would say an extraordinary and very evident passivity that occurs when we are fully plugged into our devices and our relationship with this very seductive technology that has in many ways taken over our lives in the last 10 years, 15 years. And it takes a conscious effort. And to quote my good friend Gwyneth Paltrow, when she ended her marriage to it's Chris Martin, isn't it, from Coldplay, we have to have a conscious uncoupling. And for me, the metaphorical image there is a plug and a socket, and there's nothing sexual about that. But I feel like that's the strength of the connection. I used the word magnetic before, and again, you think like a really strong magnet on metal, you know, trying to prise the magnet away from the metal or vice versa. Like, just think of the strength of that adhesion and trying to, you know, cleave them apart. I feel that can be our relationship to, you know, Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever our favorite websites are on the internet or social media platforms, whatever it might be. It's that kind of thing. And that uncoupling, it is, you know, it requires something quite dramatic and physical to go, you know, clunk, separate, step away, and get air between you and the device, you and the website. I mean, the way I experience it, if I find myself tired and absent-mindedly, vegetatively scrolling online, I feel my energy just getting more and more passive and more narrow, and it feels like my energy is just spiraling away from me, like leaving my body and just spiraling away and down into a smaller hole until I feel like there's nothing left of me. Like, physically I'm gone. I've just surrendered my consciousness to you know, to pictures of cats or karate practitioners or women in, you know, bikinis on Italian, you know, sports bikes, or, you know, whatever it might be that's just there on my feed. I'm like, okay, what's this? Or some, you know, really cool art thing. And I just go, oh, I just feel ill. It's there's a type of, I don't know if it's a type of vertigo or nausea that kicks in, and it's like I've just eaten too much junk food. I want to eat something clean. I want to have, give me salads for the next 24 hours. I need to kind of stretch or, walk in the woods and just escape. And then I need to retrain my brain to calm down and seek clarity. And it's almost like emerging from a dream. And this comes back to my issue with this kind of aesthetic that's constantly presented in the wellness sphere. It's like I need to go out and touch things and go, is that a tree? And I'll touch the tree and go, oh, it is a tree. Is that a stone? And I'll pick up the stone. Oh, it is a stone. Is that a puddle? And I'll walk through the puddle and see the mucky water on my shoes. And so on, and go, okay, this is the real world. This is where I live. And to trust that and remind myself of my organic nature and embrace it and let it nourish me. And that's something I can never say or have never said about my phone. It's not nourishing me. And again, if you scroll back through the episodes, there is an episode there somewhere on where do we get our nourishment from. Anyway, maybe that's all I should say about that for the moment. I was talking to some different men over the last couple of days. And it's funny, something came up. I'm trying to think if it was three different men. And one was a very old friend, one was a new friend, and one was someone I'd literally just met. And this is three separate conversations in three separate moments. But in each of the conversations, there was an iteration of the idea, sometimes literally, sometimes more abstractly or as a corollary of something else we were talking about. But there was an iteration of the idea that men don't talk and men bottle things up and men don't have... and I can't remember if I spoke about this recently, but men don't have an emotional vocabulary or a vocabulary to help them explore their feelings. And it was very striking to me because obviously I like to talk. This podcast doesn't exist without my relationship to talking and to being verbal and to trying, to a desire to make connections, a desire to understand things, and a desire to explore emotions, and to explore psychological and emotional well-being. That was a sort of a driving premise of the blog that preceded the podcast. And you've heard me, if you've listened to the podcast, you will have heard me defend my male friends and their ability to wade into these waters with me over the years at different times in different circumstances. And the strength of those friendships, I believe, is largely built on that connective tissue, a connective tissue of sharing, of being emotionally open, of a readiness to be vulnerable, and to a willingness to support each other, and again to use the phrase to hold space for each other at different times, and the friendships that have lasted have been the ones where that's remained consistent. And I think in generally my experience has been, guys, certainly the men in my life, my contemporaries, my friends, those friendships, a through line there has been a trust, in many cases, a trust that the thread can be picked up, even if there's been a long time of not seeing each other. A trust and an understanding that, we're grand and we can pick this up whenever we see each other. That's been my experience anyway. But it's what I was thinking about was this idea expressed by these different men I've spoken to in the last couple of days of, the idea that men don't talk, or maybe don't/can't talk. And it's put out there like an assumption or a received truth. And sometimes I find myself thinking to myself when these men say that, I think, is that true? Like, I'm thinking to myself, do they really believe that? Or are they just saying what's said? Are they just saying what other people say about men? And I realise that I've become very comfortable with not framing my willingness to talk. I just do it, and I let that be what it is with whomever I'm spending time with. And I realise I have faith in that idea, and I've expressed a version of that faith at different times, in the history of the podcast. The idea of just doing. Just live what you believe, and maybe as I get older, and maybe this is true for all of us, as we get older, we become better at not showing the frame, not presenting the context. I still have a habit of doing that. And sometimes I wonder, is that for my benefit rather than the benefit of the listener? This is why I think like this. This is why I approach things like this. And I question myself sometimes and go, am I just justifying my own behaviour? Am I just justifying my own choices? And is that information actually relevant to the person I'm talking to? Now, occasionally there might be a newish, like a relatively recent insight, so it'll be particularly present in my mind, and therefore I'm just sharing my own interest or my own kind of fascination with, this is what I just realised about myself, and it won't be from nowhere. There'll be something we're talking about, so it's not completely out of left field. But once again, this idea of the non-communicative male, or the emotionally blocked male, I find it very, I think it's I find it, it's a very powerful and persuasive idea. I find it sort of intellectually and emotionally, I think I find it quite a distressing or troubling, even confronting idea. It's not one I'm afraid of, but it's one I'm like, really, are we still there? Because I'm such a believer in the benefits of being open, of being unafraid to express one's vulnerability, to be unafraid to express one's uncertainty. That's a huge one for me. To be able to go, I don't know. I just don't know what the answer is. I have unresolved questions. I have unanswered questions. I have areas where I feel very ignorant and ill-informed. And I'm not on an egotistic level. That doesn't bother me. I'm like, well, of course. Why would I have knowledge in that area if I haven't studied it or had experience of it? And again, as we get older, maybe we become more confident, going, yeah, it's not something I'm familiar with, or I didn't know that, or can you tell me more, because this is the first time I'm hearing about that, or I never bothered to educate myself in that area. And one of these men I was talking about is, one of my oldest friends. I saw him earlier today. We had a walk and a coffee and a bit of a catch up. I hadn't seen him for a little while, and he was talking about his teenage son and how his teenage son is, has been going through a tricky spell. He had a rough time in school and had to change schools, and has just been on a bit of a rough ride, and there's a lot of emotion bottled up, a lot of anger, and there are maybe there are some issues there in terms of his his son's neurotypical behavior, and there might be some ADHD, possibly some spectrum behavior, autistic spectrum behavior there as well. And it's just been a tough time. And my friend was just talking about, the stress that it's caused himself and his wife, and the sensitivity that his son has to to comments from his peers, and to peer behavior, and just trying to assert himself and assert his identity, and build it in a way. And I was listening, and I kind of came away from the conversation, and I was thinking, what would I say? Like, what would I advocate to to that young man, who in the time that I've known him has always struck me as a very kind of sweet kid, a really good guy. But I was aware of some of the things that were going on, and what I think is, I would love just to say to that, I'd love to say to that young man, it's okay not to have answers. It's okay not to know what the right thing to do is. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to feel frustrated. It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel misunderstood. And I would encourage that young person to try and take ownership of that, to take ownership of not knowing, to take ownership of their thoughts and feelings, and to validate their own journey, and I try and help them to understand that everyone is going through stuff, and some people compensate for that in very different ways, and many people mask their fear and mask their sense of not knowing what to do or what to think or how to be, and it's absolutely normal, and it's normal to feel alienated and perhaps even afraid at times. And I suppose ultimately I'd be encouraging that young person to try and find the confidence, or to try and find the trust that they can turn to people for help, that they can turn to whoever, that he can turn to his dad, who's a great guy, and talk to him about stuff, that he could talk to me if he trusted me enough to go, yeah, that's a lad I can talk to. Anyone. And I know, just talking about it now, just trying to express those ideas now, I know that I have benefited so much in my life from the incredible support and love and camaraderie and encouragement that I've received from my male friends, since I was a teenager. Some friends who are still in my life, some who are not, and those experiences and that dynamic in those friendships has often been a thing that has sustained me through different crises, and I know I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. I continue to benefit from that. A lot of these men are still in my life, and there's tremendous support and emotional intelligence and true care extended, and because of that experience, because of those experiences, I often react very strongly to narratives around toxic masculinity, and just like I was saying last week, when I was talking about the Instagram post, with all the the headlines about awful male behaviour. It's not that I don't believe that stuff is happening. I know it's happening. And it's not that I don't find that stuff concerning or confronting, alarming, disappointing, a little bit scary sometimes. But I just know I've had so much experience amongst my own friendships in particular of men behaving in really admirable ways, admirable, inspirational ways at times, that I just feel very strongly that we don't talk enough about that, or maybe we're not celebrating those very everyday achievements. And yeah, I know I'm repeating some of what I said in last week's episode, but this is obviously on my mind at the moment, and it feels it's just interesting after having had conversations with like I said, a few different men over the last couple of days, all of whom are around the 50 mark, there or thereabouts. So it's it's interesting. So I'm not in any danger of shutting up. And I don't know if this is a want or a need. Do I want to talk, or do I need to talk? Or have I aligned the want and the need very well in this space? I'm not sure. See, I talk to my daughter sometimes about wanting, what she wants and what she needs. You want to sit up and watch movies all night, but you need to sleep. You want something sugary, but you need to eat some fruit. She got the concept. She got the concept very well. I was pleased. Yeah. Okay. I feel like I want to leave it there today. I was going to talk a little bit more about that wellness aesthetic idea, and the idea of packages and delivery systems. But yeah, I'm not sure how much there is to say about that idea. But do you know what I mean? Like, how something is presented is important. Do I trust this? And is it, so aesthetically, what am I responding to here? Energetically, what am I responding to here? And I think ultimately when I speak about that idea of wellness is not an aesthetic, and then the package, the delivery system, the delivery method, I realise that my barometer is finely tuned to authenticity and honesty, and that's what I've responded to. And if I come across someone who I think is being truly honest, I find it incredibly moving and inspirational. And it's very kind of gratifying when you come across people who are like, they really lift the lid, and not in a self-indulgent way or a narcissistic way, but just in a, this is my experience, or this is where I've come from, or this is my truth, if you want to use that phrase. And that's another part of the aesthetic, is the type of language that can be used around things, where people have all the right phrases and the right words, the right terminology. And again, I often smell a rat and go, okay, well, what is this really? And that's my own cynicism, and my own, again, my distrust of something that I see as phony. And that's why I often hesitate to use some of the terminology of contemporary wellness, or it's why you'll hear me put these words into inverted commas and slightly undercut them, because they're misused and they're perverted for the sake of branding and marketing, and they become meaningless. They become so far removed from their point of origin. They become so far removed from their truth that they're just strangers to their original intent, and that makes them very slippery. And I think that's when, you know, toxic positivity comes into its own, where you realize this stuff is empty. It has no meaning. It's just sounds and a look and a voice and the right colours and the right lighting. And we need to do better for ourselves. And we need to recognise the difference between the phony, the ersatz, and the real, the authentic. Because what's real and authentic is what's going to sustain us. And even if that means we just have to go, there's nothing, I'm not getting anything from this stuff, I'm going to put the phone down, or I'm going to stop listening to that person. You might choose to stop listening to me. You may have already. That's fine. That's your choice. I prefer you were out, you know, having a walk or a swim, or, you know, chopping wood, or I don't know what. You know, making yourself a nice meal, and then not taking a photograph to tell everyone about it. Yeah, just stop at making yourself a nice meal and enjoy that, and be grateful you're in a position to do so. Oh, I see the cat outside. Don't know what she's up to. Moving through the bushes, stealthy, sneaky, up to no good. I want to read you a poem. I'm going to finish with a poem today. This is one of mine. I can't remember when I wrote it. I was thinking about the shapes we make in life. I was thinking about what our bodies do. I was thinking about the energetic shape we hold in our body, emotionally. And this is what I came out with. This poem is called Armadillo. My back is strong, ready for the lash, always turning away, eyes down, stomach churning. My back is round, shaped by insults, slow footsteps, shallow breathing. My back is stuck in one position. It hides and guards me. Muscles flinching. My back is weight. Aged and knowing. It crushes me. Barely breathing. My back is closed. Forever earthbound. It wishes for wings expanding. That's it. Armadillo. Okay, so see what you make of that. I am done for another week. So come back next week if you enjoyed this. Tell your friends. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell a pal. You can give me some love on social media if you're so moved. I'm there in all the usual places. Somewhat reluctantly, but don't let that put you off. The links will be there wherever you're listening to this. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. You can email me any thoughts, requests, reactions at the clearoutlive@gmail.com. And if you're really into this and think that's actually a good product, this is an independent podcast, and I do actually put a lot of thought and a lot of love into this, and it's not for free in terms of the time I have to set aside to do it, and my attempts to keep it a product of a certain standard. So anything you could give, I'd be extremely grateful for. You can support me using Patreon, and that's patreon.com/theclearout. And for the price of a coffee, a tea, a pint, a sandwich, a vintage sports car perhaps, a small property in Wicklow, one of the most expensive places in Ireland, you could change my life. Now, for a few euros, a few dollars a month, it would make a huge difference to me. It's a great act of affirmation and validation for what I do here, and I take enormous encouragement from that. So if you're into that idea, I want to support a creative person who is trying to put something out there that is positive and of use to others, as well as being endlessly self-therapeutic. So you're contributing to my mental wellness, my mental health in a good way. Just by listening, you're doing that. And if you can't throw money at it, don't worry about it. But you can leave comments, you can leave recommendations, you can rate and review, you can subscribe, and all of that helps. So that's it. Thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of this, and I will catch you again next week if you're around. Okay, all the best. Mind yourselves. Take care. Stay safe. See you. Bye.